This is the story of the Library of Babel from Jorge Luis Borges' Labyrinths collection. It opens with a quote. "By this art you may contemplate the variation of the 23 letters. The Anatomy of Melancholy, Part 2, Section 2, Mim." I'm not sure, I thought that was line 4. The universe, which others call the library, is composed of an indefinite and perhaps infinite number of hexagonal galleries, with vast air shafts between, surrounded by very low railings. From any of the hexagons one can see, interminably, the upper and lower floors. The distribution of the galleries is invariable. 20 shelves, 5 long shelves per side, cover all the sides except 2. Their height, which is the distance from floor to ceiling, scarcely exceeds that of a normal bookcase. One of the free sides leads to a narrow hallway, which opens onto another gallery, identical to the first, and to all the rest. To the left and right of the hallway, there are 2 very small closets. In the first, one may sleep standing up. In the other, satisfy one's fecal necessities. Also, through here passes a spiral stairway, which sinks abysmally and soars upwards to remote distances. In the hallway, there is a mirror which faithfully duplicates all appearances. Men usually infer from this mirror that the library is not infinite. If it really were, why this illusory duplication? I prefer to dream that its polished surfaces represent a promise, the infinite. Light is provided by some spherical fruit which bears the name of lamps. There are 2 transversely placed in each hexagon. The light they emit is insufficient, incessant. Like all men of the library, I have traveled in my youth. I have wandered in search of a book, perhaps the catalog of catalogs. Now that my eyes can hardly decipher what I write, I am preparing to die just a few leagues from the hexagon in which I was born. Once I am dead, there will be no lack of pious hands to throw me over the railing. My grave will be the fathomless air. My body will sink endlessly and decay and dissolve in the wind generated by the fall, which is infinite. I say that the library is unending. The idealists argue that the hexagonal rooms are a necessary form of absolute space, or, at least, of our intuition of space. They reason that a triangular or pentagonal room is inconceivable. The mystics claim that their ecstasy reveals to them a circular chamber containing a great circular book, whose spine is continuous and which follows the complete circle of the walls. But their testimony is suspect, their words obscure. This cyclical book is God. Let it suffice for now for me to repeat the classic dictum. The library is a sphere whose exact center is any one of its hexagons and whose circumference is inaccessible. Infinite hexagon library. Just never ending, all expanding. Is it an actual place he's talking about? Is it an order of ideas or a categorization imperative he's thinking of? Some sort of absistent library of the mind? There are 5 shelves for each of the hexagon's walls. Each shelf contains 35 books of uniform format. Each book is of 410 pages. Each page of 40 lines. Each line of some 80 letters, which are black in color. There are also letters on the spine of each book. These letters do not indicate or prefigure what the pages will say. I know that this incoherence at one time seemed mysterious. Before summarizing the solution, whose discovery, in spite of its tragic projections, is perhaps the capital fact in history, I wish to recall a few axioms. First, the library exists ab aeterno. This truth, whose immediate corollary is the future eternity of the world, cannot be placed in doubt by any reasonable mind. Man, the imperfect librarian, may be the product of chance or of malevolent demiurgy. The universe, with its elegant endowment of shelves, of enigmatical volumes, of inexhaustible stairways for the traveler and latrines for the seated librarian, can only be the work of a god. To perceive the distance between the divine and the human, it is enough to compare these crude wavering symbols of which my fallible hand scrawls on the cover of a book, with the organic letters inside, punctual, delicate, perfectly black, and timidly symmetrical. Second, the orthographical symbols are 25 in number. This finding made it possible, 300 years ago, to formulate a general theory of the library and solve satisfactorily the problem which no conjecture had deciphered: the formless and chaotic nature of almost all the books. One which my father saw in a hexagon on circa 1594 was made of the letters MCV, perversely repeated from the first line to the last. Another, very much consulted in this area, is a mere labyrinth of letters, but the next to last page says, "O time thy pyramids." This much is already known. For every sensible line of straightforward statement, there are leagues of senseless cacophonies, verbal jumbles, and incoherences. I know of an uncouth region whose librarians repudiate the vain and superstitious custom of finding a meaning in books and equate it with the finding a meaning in dreams or in the chaotic lines of one's palm. They admit that the inventors of this writing imitated the 25 natural symbols, but maintain that this application is accidental and that the books signify nothing in themselves. This dictum, we shall see, is not entirely fallacious. Damn. I haven't read this book in a moment, but I remember this discussion of the library reflecting the absurdities of categorization and knowledge, and that we have 26 letters, but we can do so much with them and make things so senseless out of this rational system of language and memory. But this whole uncouth region whose librarians repudiate the vain and superstitious custom of finding meaning in books. Don't think about it, bro. Just turn your brain off. Just enjoy the content. Like, all you gotta do is invest in the protagonist. If they're a bad person, don't watch the entertainment. It's bad entertainment. It's for sinners. You're a sinner if you like this entertainment. Why are you watching American Psycho? You are the American Psycho. That flattening of rational criticism, or even the just suffocating of the mind, something like Burroughs' asshole learning to talk and overriding the brain's thoughts with just the cancerous shit of nothing. Damn, that really strikes at me.
Yeah.
Don't read meaning into things. Don't watch movies. And how dare you try to interpret things made by artists who are potentially working on metaphor or pun because they're trying to get across, say, something like a queer story in a time where being queer is outlawed. So they have to rely on innuendo. I know when I was talking about Andor, I was talking about the limits of innuendo, but there is still a use for innuendo. You have to be able to talk in these codes around the authoritarians in power. That's how you get a lot of subversive art that tests the boundaries and really helps us, define what's acceptable within the culture. And something to do with Disney destroying the alter ego in the superhero movie really hurts me in the sense that, Spider-Man puts on the mask because villains who know he is Peter Parker would then go and hurt Peter Parker. And that is such a clear metaphor for operating against authoritarians or, the labor union struggles where those who were striking needed to, protect themselves and their families because there'd be Pinkertons sniffing around, and so you have to put on your work mask, you have to put on your home mask. There's that aspect of the superhero. I mean, I don't like the present day kind of forward moving plot of Damon Lindelof's HBO Watchmen show, but I did like a lot of the world building stuff it was trying to articulate, and part of that was the wearing of masks by persons of color in American history to protect themselves from crooked cops and such. That whole aspect of the superhero seems to be suffocating or on its way out, or the MCU did quite a number to get rid of that, and suddenly, to be a superhero is, to be a gig economy worker, to be your superheroic entrepreneurial self all the time, It's very telling in Spider-Man Homecoming to me, for instance, that Peter doesn't want to be a high schooler. This is my issue with Holland's Spider-Man in those first two movies. They kind of fix it in the third one, but the third one has a whole other mess of problems. But a core part of that character is that he wants to have a home life, but the superhero life always interferes, and it just always felt like Holland chasing that Tony Stark high just wanted to be in the Avengers. He never even cared to think about having a normal high school life. We're getting too far off track of the Borges here, but the need for innuendo is why I went off on that tangent, and how, I don't know, there's a Puritan American Protestant way of ingesting art where it's like, I only eat the good products, that way I could be the good boy, that I think just completely overlooks who dictates what is good and who gets to set the standards by which, something's considered excellent.
Yeah.
Because what if, you're a bigot and you just say like, well, by my standards, we're going to say that gay is bad. And then suddenly everyone who doesn't want to stand up for gay rights in the pop culture just starts parroting that and, ooh, everybody's saying gay is bad. What's up with that? Happy Pride, by the way, everybody.
Yeah.
All of our queer, them be, him be, they be friends, we love you all. Extremely frustrating and angry. I don't want to get into the Jonathan Jaws stuff too much, but just if you're at that point with your neighbor where you're doing that kind of thing to their dog, God's really not talking to you, pal. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see them in hell as well. Let's get back to this Borges, now that I've done rambling about people who don't get innuendo and bigots and how we should just do something about that.
Something strong.
How's hell going, by the way, Jacob?
It's miserable.
Miserable, all right.
Absolutely miserable.
I see you found a BFG, though.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. For a long time, it was believed that these impenetrable books corresponded to past or remote languages. It is true that the most ancient men, the first librarians, used a language quite different from the one we now speak. It is true that a few miles to the right, the tongue is dialectical, and that 90 floors farther up, it is incomprehensible. All this, I repeat, is true, but 410 pages of inalterable NCVs cannot correspond to any language, no matter how dialectical or rudimentary it may be. Some insinuated that each letter could influence the following one, and that the value of MCV is in the third line of page 71, was not one in the same series, may have yet another position on another page. But this vague thesis did not prevail. Others thought of cryptographs. Generally, this conjecture has been accepted, though not in the sense which it was formulated by its originators. 500 years ago, the chief of an upper hexagon came upon a book as confusing as the others, but which had nearly 2 pages of homogeneous lines. He showed his find to a wandering decoder who told him the lines were written in Portuguese. Others said they were Yiddish. Within a century, the language was established. A Samoyedic Lithuanian dialect of Guarani, with classical Arabian inflections. The content was also deciphered. Some notions of combinative analysis, illustrated with examples of variation with unlimited repetition. These examples made it possible for a librarian of genius to discover the fundamental law of the library. This thinker observed that all the books, no matter how diverse they might be, are made up of the same elements: the space, the period, the comma, the 22 letters of the alphabet. He also alleged a fact which travelers have confirmed. In the vast library, there are no 2 identical books. From these 2 incontrovertible premises, he deduced that the library is total and that its shelves register all the possible combinations of the 20-odd orthographical symbols, a number which, though extremely vast, is not infinite. In other words, all that is given to express, in all languages, everything, the minutely detailed history of the future, the archangel's autobiographies, the faithful catalog of the library, thousands and thousands of false catalogs, the demonstration of the fallacy of those catalogs, the demonstration of the fallacy of the true catalog, the Gnostic gospel of the Basilides, the commentary on that gospel, the commentary on the commentary on that gospel, the true story of your death, the translation of every book in all languages, the interpolations of every book in all books. When it was proclaimed that the library contained all books, the first impression was one of extravagant happiness. All men felt themselves to be the masters of an intact and secret treasure. There was no personal or world problem whose eloquent solution did not exist in some hexagon. The universe was justified. The universe suddenly usurped the unlimited dimensions of hope. At that time, a great deal was said about the vindications, books of apology and prophecy which vindicated for all time the acts of every man in the universe and retained prodigious arcana for his future. Thousands of the greedy abandoned their sweat-native hexagons and rushed up the stairways, urged on by the vain intention of finding their vindication. These pilgrims disputed the narrow corridors, proffered dark curses, strangled each other on the divine stairways, flung the deceptive books into the air shafts, met their death cast down in a similar fashion by the inhabitants of remote regions. Others went mad. The vindications exist. I have seen two which refer to persons in the future, to persons who perhaps are not imaginary. But the searchers did not remember that the possibility of a man's finding his vindication, or some treacherous variation thereof, can be computed as 0. At that time, it was also hoped that the clarification of humanity's basic mysteries, the origin of the library and of time, might be found. It is very similar that these grave mysteries could be explained in words. If the language of philosophers is not sufficient, the multiform library will produce the unprecedented language required, with its vocabularies and grammars. For 4 centuries now, men have exhausted the hexagons. There are official searchers, inquisitors. I have seen them in the performance of their function. They always arrive extremely tired from their journeys. They speak of a broken stairway which almost killed them. They talk with the librarian of galleries and stairs. Sometimes they pick up the nearest volume and leaf through it, looking for infamous words. Obviously, no one expects to discover anything. As was natural, this inordinate hope was followed by an excessive depression. The certitude that some shelf in some hexagon held precious books, and that these precious books were inaccessible, seemed almost intolerable. A blasphemous sect suggested that the searches should cease, and that all men should juggle letters and symbols until they constructed, by an improbable gift of chance, the canonical books. The authorities were obliged to issue severe orders. The sect disappeared, but in my childhood I've seen old men who, for long periods of time, would hide in the latrines with some metal discs in a forbidden dice cup and feebly mimic the divine disorder. Can language save us? Can we find answers in language, or are we just like advanced primates, just writing down what these sounds mean and hoping there's some sort of order to the noises we're making? Sure, there's common traction and there's generalizations, but there's something specific always lost, isn't there? I don't know. I think it's like waiting for a corrupt legal system to do away with a corrupt politician. You're not accounting for the fact that the corruption's part of the system. It's part of the process. It's just the function of what it do. You're expecting an abstinent object to do something subsistent, but you need to be existent to actually do something. Dang, that's a baron of hell right there, Jacob.
Yeah, it doesn't only have as a pistol right now.
Others, inversely, believed that it was fundamental to eliminate useless works. They invaded the hexagons, showed credentials which were not always false, leafed through a volume with displeasure, and condemned whole shelves. Their hygienic, aesthetic furor caused the seamless perdition of millions of books. Their name is excreted, but those who deplore the treasures destroyed by this frenzy neglect 2 notable facts. 1. The library is so enormous that any reduction of human origin is infinitesimal. The other, every copy is unique, irreplaceable, but, since the library is total, there are always several 100,000 imperfect facsimiles, works which differ only in a letter or a comma. Counter to general opinion, I venture to suppose that the consequences of the Purifier's depredations have been exaggerated by the horror these fanatics produced. They were urged on by the delirium of trying to reach the books in the Crimson Hexagon, books whose format is smaller than usual, all-powerful, illustrated, and magical. Is he describing manga? They were urged on by the delirium of trying to reach the books in the Crimson Hexagon, books whose format is smaller than usual, all-powerful, illustrated, and magical. I think he's describing manga there. We also know of another superstition of that time, that of the man of the book. On some shelf, in some hexagon, men reasoned, there must exist a book which is the formula and perfect compendium of all the rest. Some librarian has gone through it, and he's analogous to a god. In the language of this zone, the vestiges of the remote functionary's cult still persist. Many wandered in search of him. For a century, they exhausted in vain the most varied areas. How could one locate the venerated and secret hexagon which housed him? Someone proposed a regressive method. To locate book A, consult first a book B, which indicates A's position. To locate book B, consult first a book C, and so on to infinity. In adventures such as these, I have squandered and wasted my years. It does not seem unlikely to me that there is a total book on some shelf of the universe. I pray to the unknown gods that a man, just one, even though it were thousands of years ago, may have examined and read it. If honor and wisdom and happiness are not for me, let them be for others. Let heaven exist, though my place be in hell. Let me be outraged and annihilated, but for one instant, in one being, let your enormous library be justified. The impious maintain that nonsense is normal in the library, and that the reasonable, and even humble and pure coherence, is an almost miraculous exception. They speak, I know, of a feverish library whose chance volumes are constantly in danger of changing into others and affirm, negate, and confuse everything like a delirious divinity. These words, which not only denounce the disorder but exemplify it as well, notoriously prove that their author's abominable taste and desperate ignorance. In truth, the library includes all verbal structures, all variations permitted by the 25 orthographical symbols, but not a single example of absolute nonsense. It is useless to observe that the best volume of the many hexagons under my administration is entitled The Combed Thunderclap, and another The Plaster Cramp, and another Exactus Mlo. These phrases, at first glance incoherent, can no doubt be justified in a cryptographical or allegorical manner. Such a justification is verbal, and ex hypothesi already figures in the library. I cannot combine some characters. DHCMRLCHTDJ, which the Divine Library is not foreseen, and which in one of its secret tongues do not contain a terrible meaning. No one can articulate a syllable which is not filled with tenderness and fear, which is not, in one of these languages, the powerful name of a god. To speak is to fall into tautology. This wordy and useless epistle already exists in one of the 30 volumes of the 5 shelves of one of the innumerable hexagons, and its reputation as well. An n number of possible languages uses the same vocabulary. In some of them, the symbol library allows the correct definition, a ubiquitous and lasting system of hexagonal galleries. But library is bread, or pyramid, or anything else, and these 7 words which define it have another value. You who read me, are you sure of you understanding my language? Funnily enough, I think I am understanding what he's saying, because this library is making me think of the internet. More on that in a moment. The methodical task of writing distracts me from the present state of men. This certitude that everything has been written negates us, or turns us into phantoms. Damn, okay. So I was bringing up the internet because, the internet exists, and if we were to suppose that language could solve everything, and we have this infinite vast space of digital cyberspace where everybody's a monkey slamming their post on a typewriter, there's a misguided assumption that we're gonna post our way out of this, you know what I mean?
Surely there's gotta be something we can say that will make everyone change their mind.
You mean we gotta do more than posting? But the methodical task of writing distracts me from the present state of men. This certitude that everything has been written negates us, or turns us into phantoms. Just the withdrawn sense of being a voyeur of the world, of only being able to do commentary on what power is doing is, I don't know, a powerful suction cup of what social media has turned into, and it does remind me of this library of Babel, in the sense that we're all showing up at the library and we're all throwing our words at the wall with the idea in mind that words are going to do something. And, well, I don't know. We can change the Overton window on cultural attitudes and shifts, but what really moves people in power to change the material flow of things that I don't have any chance at pulling the levers on? How about you, Jacob? Do you have any powerful levers I don't know about?
Not that I've been able to find, certainly.
All right, let's finish up.
I'm a tall white man, but doesn't really come in as much as I At least in ways I can use.
Damn.
I know. Oh shit. Oh, Flex moved. Doing your magical realism, boy.
Yeah, what's up, Flex?
Jorge.
Move, Jorge's, hell yeah. Yeah, let's finish up the Library of Babel here, and then I'm gonna read Funes the Memorius in the back half of today's show. I'm going to help Jacob navigate hell in a moment once I finish this short story, but the methodical task of writing distracts me from the present state of men. The certitude that everything has been written negates us, or turns us into phantoms. I know of districts in which the young men prostrate themselves before the books and kiss their pages in a barbarous manner, but they do not know how to decipher a single letter. Epidemics, heretical conflicts, peregrinations which inevitably degenerate into banditry have decimated the population. I believe I have mentioned the suicides, more and more frequent with the years. Perhaps my old age and fearfulness deceive me, but I suspect that the human species, the unique species, is about to be extinguished, but the library will endure. Illuminated, solitary, infinite, perfectly motionless, equipped with precious volumes, useless, incorruptible, secret. I've just written the word infinite. I've not interpolated this adjective out of rhetorical habit. I say that it is not illogical to think the world is infinite. Those who judge it to be limited postulate that in remote places the corridors and stairways and hexagons can conceivably come to an end, which is absurd. Those who imagine it to be without limit forget that the possible number of books does have such a limit. I venture to suggest this solution to the ancient problem. The library is unlimited and cyclical. If an eternal traveler were to cross it in any direction, after centuries he would see that the same volumes were repeated in the same disorder, which, thus repeated, would be an order. The order. My solitude is gladdened by this elegant hope.